You're listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.
Welcome to the Mammal Watching podcast with me, Charles Foley in Minneapolis.
And me, John Hall, also in Minneapolis, where Charles and I and Todd Pusser have had a fun weekend at the famous Sax-Zim bog looking for mammals and birds.
Yes, indeed. So I know I've mentioned Sax-Zim on the podcast before, and basically it's an area. It's about 3 hours drive north of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis, and it has become an extremely popular birding site, mostly birds. And this year there has been a big eruption of owls, and so you've got great gray owls coming down, boreal owls, northern hawk owls, and there have been a lot of people traveling basically from all over the country to this site to look for the owls. Now, I should just say right here that we did not go for the owls.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid. We actually went to try and see the short-tailed weasel, ermine. North American version has been split off from the European stoat. So, and that's a species that John had not seen. So we went up to see that. And Todd had not seen martin, an American martin either. So that's what we went to see. And we were moderately successful. We did see the martin, and we did see some great gray owls and northern hawk owls. But unfortunately, we dipped on the ermine.
We did. It's unfortunate. Last year, apparently, there were ermines were 10 a penny or 10 a cent. But it was a hard winter for them last year because it wasn't a particularly hard winter. So the theory is because there was little snow on the ground, these ermines that are white in the winter were being picked off by the bloody birds. So this year there were few and far between. We kept missing them. They were seen just before we arrived, and one was seen just as we were leaving. But they're not like they were last year.
Yeah, but what was interesting about this trip is so Sax-Zim, it's not a nature reserve. It has no federally protected land or state protected land. It's mostly sort of farmers' fields and some marsh and some bog. And so all of the activity occurs along public roads, and there are people's houses around, etc. And now it's become such a big thing that you've got probably several thousand people visiting, and they're just driving along the public roads, driving fairly slowly, sort of getting stuck in ditches. And then when they see an owl, also hell breaks loose, and there's vehicles all over the place. And there's a telegram app, so where people who come there, they join this telegram app, and then people post sightings of owls mostly in lifetime. So someone will say, okay, I've just seen a great gray owl at such and such a road, and then everyone goes charging over there. And this is starting to cause a reasonable amount of friction with some of the local people who are living over there, who get swamped by all these people, and they're sort of driving really slowly past their properties, etc. So ultimately, I think they're going to have to try and regulate it. Quite how they do that, I don't know. When we stopped at the local restaurant in the area, there's really only one, we talked to them about the feelings of the local people towards all these people coming in. And they said it's about 50-50. 50 people, 50% think it's great. The other 50% wish they'd never come. But this restaurant said, yes, all these people visiting is what keeps them open during the whole winter. And about 70% of all of their clients during the winter are the birders. So it's just an interesting model that I haven't really seen before, where you've all of a sudden got a tremendous amount of tourism happening within a sort of rural area, and the issues that it brings up.
Yeah, it's a real microcosm, I suppose, of what could happen in other places. As well as all the birders and the business for the local cafes, we saw local guides taking car and bus loads of people around, local photographers running tours. So it's generating all kinds of income for people, but how many of those are truly local? I don't know. And yeah, there is obviously some friction with the local community. As well as a Telegram app, there's a Facebook group. And I'd say for every 3 pictures of an owl or a martin on that Facebook group, when we were there at least, there was a picture of cars badly parked posted by a disgruntled local saying, this has got to stop. Now, you'd think with a bit of enforcement, that problem could be addressed.
We frequently promote ecotourism as a way of bringing income into an area, etc. And in many parts of the world, that does work really well. But obviously, it's not a panacea, and it can bring up some issues. And it's interesting to see what those issues are, particularly in a first world environment. And it'll be interesting to see over the years how they actually try to address that. Yeah,
it's interesting the way this ecotourism model works differently in different places, or can do. As you were saying, Charles, the challenges that wildlife faces in parts of Africa, for example, are rather different to what the wildlife faces in northern Minnesota, where it's not really a problem of poaching species, but it's more of habitat destruction. And here, that is being solved in part by the Friends of Sac Zim Bog, who seem to be very successful in raising money to buy reasonably large tracts of land around the bog and protect them. I imagine that also comes with its own challenges and perhaps a bit of conflict with the locals, but it's interesting how it's working there.
Yeah, it's a slightly interesting dilemma. Yeah. But the other thing that we did when we were there was we had a mini testing session of different thermal images.
Yeah, fascinating. So I'm being sent thermal images now occasionally by companies who would like me to test them and write a review. So between us, we had 5 different thermal images that ran the range of models and price ranges. So I have a Zeiss, which is the top of the range binocular. I brought along a new model called a Top Dom. We call it the Top Dog, which is only, I think, $500, also monocular. I have one of the new thermal master cameras that are the kind you can plug into your phone, but that now comes also built into a little handle that you can attach a phone or a screen they supply to it with a laser pointer built in. Charles had his Pulsar, which he's had for a few years.
Yes, very old Pulsar, 8 to 10-year-old Pulsar, and Todd had a Taipan. Yes, a Taipan. So and again about $400 for the Taipan. So how much was the phone one? How much?
I think it's about $500.
Right. Big differences in price. You've got the Zeiss, which is about $3,000, and then the Chinese models, which vary between about $400 and $500, and then the Pulsar, which way back when I bought it was probably about $1,500, and I believe a new one is in the $2,000 range. So that's what we had, and we tested them on a number of animals, and very interesting results.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it was it's got me thinking about how we test and decide on what thermal scope to buy. And there were reviews we post on the website where we test them, and then people chime in with their opinions about which one is best, and it seems to be very often the one they've got. And I think a lot of it really seems to depend on the actual animal you're looking at and the conditions you're in, and what just works for you. So in Sac Zim, it was very cold. Looking through a thermal with white as the heat, the ground was black, the air was black, the trees were bright white. And animals often didn't stand out very well, at least in the Zeiss, at that temperature range. But I also know very well that at other temperature ranges, like in tropical forest, the Zeiss was beating other thermal scopes hands down. I was picking up, bugs flying around brightly. So, I think a lot of this is about thinking about where you're going to be using it most. And also it's very important about what you actually like using. So, and how you're going to use it was the third thing. So I've got these ones attached to my phone. They're great because they're inexpensive and they're very easy to travel with. No one's ever going to ask questions about them because they're tiny. But I must admit, I'm still not very comfortable using them because I've spent 8 years now looking through a monocular, and I'm just used to that technique of, take 10 steps, walk, scan the forest. That's what we were doing in Papua, to great effect. Keep going with this phone. With the phone cameras, it's
both it's a different way of kind of walking and moving that I'm not used to. And then when I found an animal with the phone camera, locating it, I was really kind of, my spatial awareness was really thrown off. Now that helps now because of this built-in laser with this new thermal master, but it's still not, I'm not as good with it, I would say, as I am with the Zeiss, no matter which has got the better clarity. The other thing is, it's not just about detection, it's about observation, and it's about clarity, and it's about what's easy on your eye. And so I only use thermal scope for two things. One is to locate an animal, or detect an animal, know an animal's there, and then it's to navigate or locate it in real life. So no matter how good a thing is at sensing the heat, you've then got to track it down, and that might be easy in an open field, but it's very difficult in a crowded, cluttered forest with lots of thermal clutter. And you have to navigate through, well, at least I do, the pattern of branches, and well, there's a V in the tree there, and there's a vine coming across, so that means the animal must be there. Now that Zeiss is excellent for that because it is so clear. The image is so good. So that's also, I think, something to bear in mind. But ultimately, I think it's, we need to test these scopes in different conditions with different animals, different temperatures, to figure out what works best where and at what range. And then a lot of it is really about what you're used to, because and what works for you, because having a thermal scope undoubtedly is better than not having one for finding animals. And so it's great to have something you can afford and that you will use and enjoy using.
Yeah. So I think obviously the Zeiss, you have the best image and it's the most robust. I'm sure if you drop it a few times, it'll be all right. And if you're going to spend hours looking through it, it's going to be the easiest on the eye. Right? But of course, it comes with a price to match. I'm with you with the handheld ones that go on your phone. I'm just not used to that system. And so my brain takes time to actually focus in on the image and figure out exactly what I'm looking at, etc. So personally, I don't like those very much. But what this one did have was, as you mentioned, a laser pointer built in. So basically, when you point at a tree or a bush or the dot in the tree, you can then press the laser and it'll show you roughly where it is that you're looking. And that is extremely useful. And I'm hoping that gets adopted by other companies that use this, because it shouldn't be that difficult to incorporate. But I have to admit, when I looked at the amount of heat that's being given off and how that's showing up on the image, for me, the Top Don, which is this model I never heard of, it's about $500, that one really stood out. And I could pick up things with that model that certainly I couldn't with a Pulsar. And it's, perhaps even sometimes outdid the Zeiss. So I'm going to test that model in Ghana soon, because, of course, a lot depends just on the environmental conditions. And some of them may do really well in particular environmental conditions, but not well in others. So I will test it out in a sort of tropical forest environment and see what that's like. But I have to admit, the advances that have been made in thermal images just in the last 5-6 years have been quite astonishing. And it's getting to the point where even for relatively modest sums of money, you can get yourself a really good piece of kit.
So maybe some scopes are better at certain temperature ranges and differentials than others. Mm-hmm. That is, as we were saying just now, that is a thesis waiting to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously there are going to be issues with robustness. I think some of these cheaper Chinese ones, if you drop them once or twice, that's probably it. And if that is your sole thermal imager that you have on a big trip with you, then that's obviously going to be a big deal if you drop it and it breaks. But I have to admit, I was pretty impressed by these cheaper models. And as I said, the improvement in technology in the last few years has just been staggering.
And that will continue.
Yeah. And when I'm back from Ghana on the next podcast, I will give an update and let people know how the different models worked over there.
All right. Let's turn to our guest.
So we're very happy today to be joined by Sid Francis, actually Geraint Francis, but everyone calls him Sid, from his home in Chengdu, China. I first got to know Sid, it must have been 10 years ago now. We've corresponded online for ages about the mammals of China. But Sid and I finally met at Christmas when I had a week in Chengdu with him. It was a fabulous trip, some great mammals, but one of the things that really stood out, apart from the mammals, was Sid as a character, as a storyteller. We all had a lot of fun with Sid. And so as soon as I met him, I said to Charles, I wrote to Charles and said, look, we've got to have this man on the podcast. He's a star. Sid, it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you guys as well, yeah. Yeah, and that was a great trip. And, yeah, it was special because we all had so much fun.
Yeah, it sounded like it. Welcome, Sid.
All right. So can you tell us how you first became interested in wildlife?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been born with the interest. I was born in the city, but on the outskirts of the city. And like all small boys, fishing nets, and we had books, Ladybird, Book of Birds. And in the UK, you collect those T cards, PG tips. And I was always interested in the ones with birds or butterflies or animals. But the most important thing I had was a pair of binoculars. Now, these weren't ordinary binoculars. These were from the First World War, and German binoculars, the souvenir my grandfather picked up in the trenches of France, a pair of 6x30 binoculars, and with individual eyepiece focusing. And yeah, I did all my bird watching as a kid, right up to my maybe 12 or 13, before I got a real pair of modern binoculars. I did it all with these old German binoculars, and they got such a bashing. And I look now on eBay to see how much those binoculars are worth. And they're worth a fortune. So they were important, But everything, like on the TV, the early David Attenborough programs, ZooQuest, Johnny Morris, Animal Magic, all was an interest about animals, and it led me on to where I am today.
So, Sid, I was reading your CV, and you have one of the most varied CVs I think I've ever seen. We'll get to China shortly, but can you just tell us a little bit about your career before China first?
It's all due to incompetence. I can't keep any job yet. So I got to shift from job to job. Now, I originally trained in agriculture, Aberystwyth. In those days, there weren't so many jobs with nature conservation, agriculture. You could be in the countryside, you could go anywhere, you'd be close to animals. And so I chose agriculture. And after I finished, I went to the Falkland Islands. I was on the first civilian boat that went back to the Falklands in 1982. So that was exciting. I was there for 3 years. I was a shepherd, worked in a research unit with grassland trials. Did many things there and learned a lot of skills, mechanicking and things like that. And then I went to Denmark afterwards. I did a little bit with overland travel before that, mechanic, driving trucks, then to Denmark, a manager for pig farm. And then I worked in schools. I became a teacher. It just goes on and on, but basically, the most meaningful job I had was just by luck, at that, luck, or it was the time of the Bosnian War, and Denmark had taken lots of Bosnian refugees, and a friend told me to go down to a refugee centre and volunteer. And from that, within 2 or 3 hours there, I've been offered a full-time job, and I was there for 9 years, or within the organisation, with refugees, working with Bosnia, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. And then that drove me completely crazy with PTHD. Yeah, that's what drove me off to China. Oh, and I took another degree at the end of that with the Red Cross. So I got also a teacher's degree. So I've done lots of things, lots of different careers.
Yeah, that is amazing. Okay, so eventually you end up in China, right?
Yeah.
And when you arrive there, did you go there in order to run nature tours, or how did that come about?
No, not really. How can I say? Birder, first and foremost. I was teaching here to begin with, and only intended to stay for 6 months. And then met a girl who I'm still married to now. And, and then started writing on social media about birding here, and people writing back, yeah, can you organise trips for us? So the whole thing was almost forced on me. It wasn't my idea. It was something that just came.
And were you in Sichuan then?
Yeah, I've always been in Sichuan. I've never been anywhere else. I'm
still fascinated by the shepherd on the Falkland Islands. Was your love of nature one of the inspirations to want to go to the Falklands?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember the name. Yeah, there was that series of wildlife programs on ITV in the UK. Yeah, that all came from South Georgia and the Falkland Islands. It was a woman who produced them. So I was always interested in the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. So yeah, it was most definitely a love of nature that drove me to that country or those islands.
Was there any tourism at all back then? Obviously not during the war, but before the war, were people visiting for wildlife?
Well, there was even tourism afterwards, yeah. Just a year or so afterwards, the cruise ships started to come again, yeah. So, but I can't remember any wildlife tourism. That's something that started again. That's all come now since the airport has been built. When I was there was no airport. And by the way, I'm the first person ever to touch down on that runway. Me and a pilot, we're actually surveying geese. And he asked me, "Do you want to be the first person to touch down on the runway?" And they put oil cans all over the runway to stop an Argentine surprise attack, but there was a big empty space in the middle so heavy vehicles could go across. So we had one of those Britain Norman Islanders, the short takeoff landing planes, and we came down, and workers started to look, what the hell's going on here? Yeah, this little aeroplane coming down, and we touched down with the wheels, and the pilot pulled back the throttle. I was sitting in the co-pilot seat, and we whizzed up again. We got into so much trouble over that. Yes. I nearly got deported from the Falklands for doing that, yeah, or at least being part of that little episode.
And we can have a whole episode on some of your Falkland stories, I know.
Yeah.
Let's get back to mammal watching.
Yeah, sure.
So
sure.
I was gobsmacked by how much Sichuan has changed since 2009, I think, when I was last there. And at least to me, for that very quick trip, it seems to have changed for the better. What do you make of it? What are the biggest changes since you've arrived in China generally, and especially for wildlife watching?
Well, of course, there's all the towns have expanded, yeah. And but infrastructure, roads. So what would probably taken you a whole day or maybe 2 days to get to Tangier in the old days, now just takes a matter of 4 hours from Chengdu, yeah. So everything is that much quicker, but it comes with its downside because lots of the sites now. I think the biggest pressure comes from tourism. In the old days, there wasn't so much tourism. Now people have got expendable incomes. Now people want to travel. Now people want to go to the same places that we watch our mammals at. So, yeah, many places now become too crowded with people. It's very, very, very difficult now to get to some of the sites, like Wulong or Balang, for example. Tourism has created such a pressure, such a change. But the big problem with this is the accessibility. There are still so many places between the roads, between the tourist sites, but they're on mountains, they're on steep-sided slopes, they're inaccessible. The good things, there's such a increase in interest. People now know the value of the wildlife, and there's a new generation of Chinese who are becoming great birders and great mammal watchers. And it's not just the academic side of mammal and bird watching, but it's civilian science. It's ordinary people, becoming very, very valuable in gaining data and finding new sites, finding new species. And certain species become more common that have been rare before. Species become more common because there are more people watching for these species, bird-wise especially. And it must be the same for mammals as well.
Remember that night we were the last night, I think, when we were in Labahay, and it's like one of the most bizarre things I've seen, but it shows sort of how much mammal watching is growing just among Chinese people. Was we're up that little side road, it's snowing, it's well below zero, and it's like 9 o'clock at night, and we see this light coming down the road, and it's a guy on a Segway with a massive head torch, and it turns out he's selling thermal scopes to passers-by.
Yeah, that's China in a nutshell. It's once in a lifetime experiences every day.
And are some of these, you say there's lots of tourists going out to these places, but are they starting to do night walks or night drives to see the mammals as well? Some of the more focused stuff, or is it just like over here in the States, mostly they just come in for the day and then out again?
A lot of it is introducing children to wildlife. So it's a big thing, that they have weekend schools, weekend wildlife schools, weekend wildlife tours. And that, again, is educating a new generation of Chinese to respect and protect their wildlife. Like everywhere else, photography has driven a huge interest. But we have more and more young people who are just generally interested without photography, about the environment, because the environment is a big topic for young people here, climate change and preserving the environment. They realise there's so much development here, and something has to be done about protecting and conserving the natural environment.
You start off in China as a bird guide, but spend a lot of time now mammal watching. And I heard you talking about this on the Naturally Adventurous podcast. But what are some of the biggest differences between the two communities? Do you agree that mammal watchers are way cooler than birders?
Well, looking at you, John, and looking at the way you, God, you were Mr. Cool, yeah. But no, that's why Zeiss chose you, yeah. You were their pin-up boy, man. But no, you get me on dangerous ground here, yeah, because I gotta keep my foot in both camps, yeah. But I tell you what, if you look at the where my mammal watchers come from, they come from everywhere, man. I'm getting them from Brazil. I'm getting somebody from Mexico. all over Europe. So I think it's a global phenomenon, this new interest. I think there is a new wave of mammal watchers, yeah? Mammal watchers, it's driven by, you have now mammal listers and all this kind of thing, and the photographers, but they're coming from everywhere. I've had somebody from Ukraine, yeah, on one of my trips. Yeah, a couple from Ukraine, and they had to go through all sorts of rigmarole to get the permission to come out of Ukraine to go on one of my tours in China. Yeah. So, yeah. Whereas, and the other thing is, this is interesting as well. Lots of the birders are childless, single guys, yeah, who have basically been birders since, very young, yeah. And they devoted their whole lives to birding, yeah, and never got married, never had kids. Whereas a lot of the mammal watchers are, can we call them normal family people, yeah? So fathers and mothers and things, people like this, yeah. So, should we whisper it? Yeah, birders tend to be a little bit more nerdier than the mammal watchers.
I don't think anyone's ever accused us of being normal before, but we'll take it. We'll take it too.
I'm trying to be polite, yeah.
Right.
Do you think the mammal watching communities, you were talking about this with Charlie, is better connected somehow than the birders?
Better connected? I can't remember what I said to those guys, yeah. Better connected in what way?
I think you said tonight you thought news travelled a lot quicker among the mammal watchers than the birders.
Well, your site, yeah, because then it makes there's not so many sites, yeah, so the news is very, very concentrated, and but here in China, maybe they're better connected. I don't know. But then again, you got different tiers, yeah. You got the hardcore in the middle, yeah. You got the slightly less interested, yeah. And then you got people who maybe follow a husband or a wife or a son who are vaguely interested. But the hardcore, I think they are, yeah. Because you guys are all everybody knows each other in mammal watching. And I think I've had so many of the top tier mammal watchers on my trips, yeah, where I've still got to meet many birders, yeah.
Yes, I suspect partly it's obviously there's so many more birders than mammal watchers, and given that mammal watching really does revolve around the mammalwatching.com website, that in essence John's personality sort of influences the mammal watching community, and there's a generally good feeling about it, and people tend to be pretty polite to each other, etc. And so that permeates through the community, and I suspect it will do while it remains relatively small. Once it gets bigger, then it'll perhaps expand to the point where it's a bit more like the birding community. But for the time being, I'd say it's a very civil group of people.
For the most part.
For the most part.
For the most part, yeah. I bet the civil and the uncivil parts of it. Definitely uncivil here. I'm proud of it.
So back to China. So China has so much potential, and really, much of it's not that well known to the mammal watching world. Mammal watchers didn't really start going there until relatively recently, and it seems as though quite a few places have been closed to ecotourism. But which are the most important areas now for mammal watchers? And if people were to come to visit China, what would you recommend? Which areas would you recommend that they visit?
Okay, Sichuan is the number one area and the easiest area to visit. Tourist infrastructure is set up in a way that it's easy to get hotels. It's easy to travel and it's easy to find guides. And then you have the parks like Labahur and Tangier, which allow for easy mammal watching. They, you can do night watching at Labahur. I don't know whether you're not supposed to do night watching at Tangier, but it can be done. And you have the grasslands as well at around Roragai, Langmusa, and you also have the ones further to the south at Sichuan. So you have all the big species. We have snow leopard, we have the pandas. Sichuan is the easiest place to visit. Then you have Qinghai. But Qinghai is on the Tibetan Plateau, and it's a little bit more difficult. There are more restrictions with access, more restrictions in terms of rules. But it's also possible, yeah. If you have a guide who knows his way about, who knows which places you can visit, which places not to visit. It's very, very difficult to get information for any of these sites, because if you ask anywhere, the answer will always be no, because no is the easiest answer to give. So Qinghai can be tricky in that way. You ask somebody, is it possible to come to this area? And you're likely to get a no answer. You just have to drive out there, see if it's all working.
What would you likely see in Qinghai?
Oh, Qinghai, snow leopards, Pallas's cat. Then you've got the big mammals like Kiang, wild ass. You've got the Tibetan antelope. There's these are wild yak. These are all pretty easy to find. Snow leopard obviously takes a bit of finding. Pallas's cat's not too bad. You get the occasional Eurasian lynx as well. Difficult. But yeah, we have a snow leopard site just 1 hour from a hotel with sit-down toilets and warm showers. So it's a little bit different from the early days of Ladakh and sleeping in freezing tents. There was even a burger bar. And I have to complain and apologise to people who have heard there's a burger bar. I'm afraid the burger bar is closed, yeah. But there used to be a burger bar there as well, selling good chicken burgers, yeah. But that's gone. So just got the sit-down toilets and the showers now.
You even have a reliable spot for blue bear, right?
Yeah, well, reliable. If it's left open, it's a rubbish dump. But you never know. One day they're gonna close it, or they're gonna put a fence around it. Yeah, but yeah, I think we counted 14 blue bears on that in the site. Yeah, but yeah.
And the blue bear is the
Tibetan brown bear. Now, it's so much easier to travel to China unless you're British or American, because all European countries are visa-free. Australia, visa-free. So, So I'm afraid if you come from South America or North America or from the good old UK, you've got it's not a difficult visa process, but you've got a visa process to go through, which lots of questions, but actually getting the visa is quite easy. The visa process is a dog that barks, doesn't bite. So,
good to know.
Is that a Chinese proverb?
Yeah, I was amazed about how easy it was with my Australian passport this time. I literally didn't have to fill out a single form. I just walked up to the immigration desk in Chengdu, showed them my passport, and they stamped it 30 days, no problem. And last time I was in China 10 years ago, we had to stick to an itinerary. We had to reserve all our hotels in advance. We were told we couldn't deviate, a single iota from that. So it really does feel like a whole different country.
And obviously, sort of things are opening up, more and more new places. But are there any other sites which are currently off limits to people, where there would be mega mammal species that you're hoping will open up in the near to moderate near future?
Well, the really sorry story is the snow leopard site, which was set up by the Three Rivers NGO, Angsai, and that's been closed. We've just had word now that it's closed because it's been put within a core area of a snow leopard reserve, the Three Rivers Reserve, and because it's in the core area, it's been, there is supposed to be no tourism in core areas of reserves, even though there are homestays and guides, and the local community have been making money out of the project, and that money has gone into negating the losses the local community get because of snow leopard kills to domestic stock. So it's a shame, yeah.
Valley of the Cats, Terry Townsend's.
Yeah, that's Valley of the Cats, yeah. That's the same place, yeah. That's Terry Townsend's project. So I was talking to, or at least I was contacted Terry the other day about that, because we have clients who want to go there. At the moment they can't, yeah. But that situation is under review. So it might change. And it might change for the positive. So that's not the end of the story. But all of these things here take time. So let's see what happens. And of course, we have the Giant Panda National Park as well, yeah. So giant pandas are strictly off limits. And now they've joined up all the areas for the giant panda. So what access we did have into these areas now is even more difficult. On one hand, it's a good thing, yeah, because it indicates increased protection and conservation. But on the other hand, nobody can go in and see these animals, yeah, which is not good.
With the access that you currently have in China, can you pretty much see all of the big mega mammals or the rarities that China has to offer? Or are there still some that you just can't access?
Well, yeah, I haven't seen a clouded leopard yet. I've only ever twice seen a Asian golden cat. But everything else, yeah, including the forbidden animals. So, yeah, they're all there to be seen, yeah.
So Sichuan and Qinghai, they're magical, and you really helped open those up. But China is a huge country, and I was struck after you that I went to Yunnan just for a couple of days to see the snub-nose. But looking at the mammal list, there's all this other stuff around Yunnan, but there's just no information on my side, at least, on where to see it. And then there's a whole of the rest of the country. What are some of the other provinces where you think either now or quite soon there might become a more of a sort of established mammal watching itinerary and routes?
Well, I don't know if they'll ever become an established one at the moment, but Xinjiang province in the very northwest, that must be very, very interesting. And that's really open for exploration. And then I'm thinking about Gansu. Gansu borders Sichuan, has its own pandas. But if you go further up, yeah, you go into the desert regions and the Gobi. And I think that looks very, very inviting, yeah. And then you've got that area in the northeast of China that borders up with Siberia. There must be tiger up there. I know that there's. I saw a documentary about a policeman who was combating tiger poaching, and there they were showing tiger pug marks, and there must be tigers there. In fact, Putin's tiger, great hero, Mr. Putin, yeah, he collared, he put a radio collar on a tiger. He must have done it topless as well, if I can remember, yeah. But he radio collared this tiger so they could follow it, yeah. And apparently went over the Chinese border, yeah. And apparently the Chinese, they surrounded the area of forest with armed troops, probably tanks as well, yeah, to prevent any Chinese poachers going in and taking Mr. Putin's tiger, yeah. That must have been the world's most protected animal at that time, yeah. So I would have loved to have gone after that tiger. So yeah, I think northeast China, yeah, holds a load of potential as well, yeah.
How much of this is off limits to visitors now? I mean, if you could find a friend and a Chinese friend maybe in a car and everything, can you get into these places, or are they all closed to tourism?
I think I can get into the places, yeah, but it's no good for a group, yeah, because you can never promise an itinerary, yeah. But if you go with someone like ZZ, yeah, and who's got the gift of the gab as well, yeah, because a lot of things are, yeah, they might have a rules and say no, yeah, but when you turn up, you know, you can persuade people to let you in, yeah. So, yeah, it's possible, yeah.
I mean, clearly China has some amazing animals, and you have seen most of these, so obviously some spectacular mammals. Do you have any particular encounters or sightings that you've had that really stand out to you?
Yeah, well, okay. First red panda was so great, yeah, because it came as such a surprise. Because when we started doing this, that must have been 15 years ago, more, yeah. There was little information about this, yeah. And nobody was writing about seeing red pandas. And then birding, and then suddenly seeing a red panda go past. And then my first giant panda, okay, I'm mentioning the forbidden animal, that was at Labahur. And looking at this yellowy white thing, thinking, is that a panda? Is that not a panda? Is that a panda? And my client's dismissing it, and then suddenly it gets off. It starts walking. That was great. But recently now, this I told you before this started, we got a new mammal, this parti-coloured flying squirrel. Seen any new mammal now, yeah, is fantastic. But that was great, yeah. It's most of our flying squirrels are so lazy. They're so torpid. They're like sloths. They just conserve energy, rarely fly. This is a small flying squirrel, and it runs up and down the tree like a rodent. And then when he jumps off the tree, it makes a kamikaze dive and just pulls out the last second. It's just so, yeah. Even the new mammals like that, yeah, they make a huge impression, yeah, like they should do on any good mammal watcher, yeah. Anything new, first time is always great.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Now, obviously, our trip went completely perfectly, but I know it's not always the case on some of your trips. Would you like to share a story or two?
Yeah, I have hundreds of them, yeah, but most of them are censored, yeah. But we could have stories about accidents and all sorts of stuff. But I was thinking about it. One of the places where we get a lot of problems, or most problems, is food. People have different tastes, obviously, yeah. Liking types of food is very subjective. But sometimes we get people who have requirements. We get vegetarians or vegans. And many years ago, I know this gent won't be listening to this. If you are, yeah, please, I apologise. You're going to find the truth now. So, yeah, get the lawyers, yeah, and everything. This might be libel case here, but no, but I once had a vegetarian, yeah, a really great guy, yeah, and we went to this countryside restaurant, and they make tofu, yeah, and they make a dark tofu in blocks, and there was this big cauldron with these dark blocks, and they were stirring it all up, yeah. And I go, oh, there's dark tofu, and I say 2 bowls, and they ladle in the bowls for us, yeah. And I'm away somewhere, and then I look, this guy's eating. Oh yeah, this is really, really good, yeah. I'm not thinking anything. It's congealed blood. So, what do you do in a situation like this, yeah? Are you honest? The guy's really enjoying this, yeah. It's not going to kill him, yeah? So I said, yeah, this is some of the best tofu I've ever tasted. We went on to have 2 portions, yeah. So, yeah, that's one of the cringe-worthy. Of course, we've had other problems, yeah. We've always had scrapes. We've got out of everything. Never been put behind bars. Never had big problems. And even our worst problems, yeah, we found solutions, yeah. There's always, the good thing in China is there's always somebody to help as well, yeah. So that was one of the, one of the funnier times we had a problem.
And Sid, so if people listening to this podcast are inspired to visit China, what sort of itinerary would you recommend for some first-time visitors? And then how many?
Okay, you need, don't do it like John Hall, yeah. You did it far too quickly, yeah. So, but you need about 14 days, yeah. And then you go around from the big parks, yeah. So basically you've got Labuhe. Well, Labuhe, you've got the red panda, and you've got a chance for giant panda. And Labuhe, you can go to areas which are allowed for tourists, where there's a chance of seeing giant panda if the weather conditions allow. So, and then you've got the major ungulates, and you've got musk deer there, forest musk deer, and the cat there is mainland leopard cat, and you've also got flying squirrels, red and white giant and grey-headed. And then you take from there further north, and you go to the grasslands in Ruragai and Langmusa. There you have the Tibetan fox. We saw so many wolves on this last trip. So wolves are fairly easy to see. I should think Sichuan is, or at least Tibetan Plateau is one of the easiest places in the world to see a grey wolf. So in the old days around Ruragai, we used to have Pallas's cat, but less so now, yeah. In fact, we haven't seen, there was one reported last year, but we haven't seen since 2019. I'm thinking that could be related to a jump over with bird flu, because that area is very, very close to gull colonies have been badly affected by bird flu. And also mountain cat, Chinese mountain cat has decreased in those areas as well. Whereas if you go into the mountains where there's not that contact with the gull colonies, we still have the mountain cat, but no Pallas's cat, because Pallas's cat are pika specialists. It's my little theory on that anyway. But yeah, so Tibetan Plateau, gazelles, Tibetan fox, Asian badger, steppe polecat sometimes, many of the Tibetan species, and of course plateau pika everywhere, huge colonies of plateau pika. And from there you go Tangier, and Tangier you pick up the Sichuan takin, and close to Tangier is Pingwu, and Pingwu is there's a habituated troop of golden snub-nosed monkey. So if you don't get snub-nosed monkey at the other sites, you can get them there with the habituated troop, and of course they're excellent for photography. So that was, 14 days gives you ample chance to see most of these animals. Yeah.
Good, Charles.
Sounds amazing. Yep.
Start thinking about this one.
What are the peak months?
Well, actually, we can do every single month, yeah. But I should think early spring, yeah, is the best month for a really big list, yeah. So, because you've got rodents more active, the weather is, you got the weather is a little bit more clement, yeah. The self motivation, when it's so cold like we had it, yeah, it's so difficult to keep on going, doing night drives and things like this. And now we work it a little bit, yeah, where me and ZZ take turns, yeah, so we can kind of balance the work, yeah, and share the work, so we get more hours driving and stuff like this. So it works good, yeah.
Sid, thank you. That was as entertaining as always. The mammals and the mammal watching of China is, as you've shown, as entertaining as your other stories, and the country is as varied as your CV. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and everybody's welcome. Yeah, there are many good guides, by the way, not just me. So there are many opportunities to get a mammal trip here in China.
Yeah, Sid, great to meet you, and thanks for extolling the virtues of China for us. And I look forward to one day meeting you in person and catching up on a few more of your stories.
Okay, Charles. Look forward to seeing you one day. And you come back, John. That was a great trip.
Thank you, Sid. All right, great seeing you again.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, bye, guys.
You've been listening to Mammal Watching with Charles Foley and John Hall. You can find other episodes at mammalwatching.com/podcast.